have any issues with sound, then if you wouldn't mind raising your virtual hand in the top right-hand side of the screen, then our moderator, Gillian, will be able to message you and sort everything out. Also, I guess the idea of today's presentation is we're going to be using this to kind of kick off maybe a series of these types of these talks. So today is kind of maybe, if you like, a high-level introduction to digital transformation for small to medium enterprises. So what we'd really like is if you do have any questions or anything you would like to discuss as we're going through, again, please type it in, or said raise your hand in the virtual system. And again, we'd really like to hear from you. So one of the bits we do want to do at the end of this talk is to, if you like, start a discussion on either some of the bits that we touched on or anything which, if you like, you would like discussed, which we didn't get to. At the end of the presentation, there's a very short survey. So look, it'll take about 10 seconds to do, and we'd really appreciate it. So that's the housekeeping done at the start. So just to kick off, I'm going to give a very, very brief introduction to, if you like, who I'm representing. So I'm coming from the company DigiGrow. So we are a digital transformation consultancy. So basically we work with small to medium enterprises to grow their businesses through the power of digital. So basically try to use all the technology, all the systems, all the data that's available to basically grow your business. And to do that in a practical sense, we do website and app development and design. One of the biggest things is we help companies actually manage their data and interpret their data. So we call that business analysis as a service. We look at company CRM systems, and we offer marketing as a service. So as we go through this, hopefully some of the case studies and some of the examples will maybe highlight how some of these can actually be implemented on a day-to-day basis. So again, from the title, this is a presentation on digital transformation. And I suppose one of the things I just want to get out of the way at the very start is digital transformation has become a little bit of a buzzword, and there's always a bit of a danger when that happens, that if you like, we lose the practical aspect of how we can actually make use of it, or how we can how we can apply it on a day-to-day basis. It becomes almost more of an abstract concept than a hard and cold reality. So I suppose the idea is to say, yes, there is a big fancy definition of what it is, but the whole point of this presentation is really to figure out, for a small business who's trying to grow, how can we actually make use of some of the key aspects. Again, one of the features of this kind of talk is to also just kind of, if you like, silently, if you like, eliminate maybe some of the fears, or if you like, perceived obstacles that companies have or that they view when they're looking at something like digital transformation. And the statistic which I like is this one, which is on screen, is the fact that say 88% of companies claim they are currently undergoing a digital transformation, but only 25, when asked, will say that they actually have a digital strategy. And from our perspective, that's probably one of the key things to address early on when you are looking at kind of undergoing some kind of digital growth procedure or digital transformation, is the fact that without a plan, it is very difficult to obtain those benefits. And it, in our experience, leads to some of the, if you like, the negative connotations that can come with this kind of transformation, which obviously have things to do with cost, wasted time, things like that. And our perspective is, if you do have a good plan in place, if you know, if you like, what route you're going down, what systems you're going to use, and what you're trying to achieve from them, then those fears are generally eliminated pretty easily at the start, and we end up getting all the benefits from the transformation. So again, just a subtle undernote to have in the back of our minds as we go through it. So I guess the kind of the flow of this talk is that we're just going to touch on some of the kind of, if you like, the simple day-to-day things that we can do very, very easily as part of our kind of business operation. And again, the purpose is to take digital transformation down from being an abstract concept to being something that by the end of this talk, you could walk into your offices and feasibly start doing right there and then for, if you like, none or very small investment. And the first one we're going to touch on, so we're going to touch on things like website optimization, data management, data analysis, and kind of file management as well. And the first one I'm going to talk about here is website optimization. Now, again, I guess at this stage, almost every single business will have a website, but I guess it's still something which if you like, people are not making full use of. And it's that making use of it, which is, if you like, the key of the kind of digital transformation perspective. It's not just having it, it's making sure you're maximizing what you're doing with it. And one of the key things to remember is the fact that these days, we still, when someone says a website, we still picture a website as being something that you view on a laptop, on a big screen. But the reality is that that is not how your website is generally being perceived. I have some statistics down the left-hand side showing obviously huge numbers in terms of how many hours and how many people spend on their phones and how many phones are out there. But the reality is we see that in our day-to-day lives. If someone were to share a link of an exciting new company with me, the reality is that I would probably open that up on my phone. So even if I will go home afterwards and I'll get a second look on my laptop, you only get one chance at a first impression. That first impression will generally be made on your mobile. So one of the kind of the key points we're talking about here when it comes to website design is the fact that really we kind of need to be very, very careful as to how we present our information, because ultimately this is the shop window. This is your first impression, and you have a couple of seconds in order to say, is that customer, potential customer, going to stick with you, or are they going to leave? So on screen, I just have almost for nostalgic reasons, a few kind of images of what websites used to look like. And looking at that now, that looks like nothing we would expect to see today. And if we saw that today, I think we wouldn't take the company seriously and we'd leave. But if you look at it, that's actually two of the biggest websites that were around on the day. So we have Apple on the right and we have Yahoo on the left. And it just shows that how in a couple of years, we've just even subconsciously begun to expect something a lot more like what I'm showing you on screen here, which was actually a website which we designed and developed for Microsoft as part of a launch campaign. But you can just see that even looking at what's on screen now in front of you, even though it's clicking through a little bit, is the fact that as a user of kind of web technology, we are used to these days seeing something which is a lot cleaner, a lot crisper. And again, this is just another one which we would have designed. And again, the purpose is just showing you that we're ultimately using this not just as a website, but we're trying to use this as that first impression of our company. And basically what we want is you want to basically use this as our shop door. Someone walks through, we have them hooked and they're going to stay with us. But to really kind of use your website for digital transformation, it's nice to have, I said, it looking well and kind of being very attractive for your customer, potential customer. But the real aspect then is to make use of it. So once you've used your nice shop front to kind of get them in the door, the practical things which you can do to turn that potential user or that user of your website into an active paying customer is to really understand who they are, what their interests are, why they have come to see you, and ultimately when they see what you're presenting to them, how are they behaving? It's the type of information which, if you like, in a non-digital sense, is borderline impossible to actually achieve. Again, if you were running a big kind of retail store, the only way to actually figure out exactly how someone feels as they're picking up each piece of clothing would be through, if you like, very detailed questionnaires and surveys and things like that. But when it comes to a digital business, we can actually do this without the customer even realizing it. We can see exactly how long the customer stayed looking at that one particular product, or once we show them a particular type of promotion or offer, how quickly they actually try to get off that page and leave the website, or if you like, navigate to a different part of it. And with that information then comes, if you like, real power to actually change your message to the consumer and present how you're presenting it, what you're presenting it, maybe even you could look at your pricing, everything like that. But ultimately, information is key. And just to kind of again bring it down to something practical which you can do, if you like, at the end of this presentation. Again, the screenshots which I'm showing you on at the moment are simply Google Analytics on the left-hand side. So again, anyone who has a website, the majority of you might even have this plugged in at the moment. And if you don't, it would be something which would be a very, very quick and essentially free operation to do, would be to drop in that Google Analytics tag, if you like, in the back of the website. And again, that means that with just one small little free action, essentially you are now going to track absolutely everything which your customers or potential customers are doing on your website. On the right hand side of the screen, what I'm actually showing you here is something which, again, some businesses in our opinion, in our experience, are making use of, but surprisingly the majority are not. And this is something which is called the Google Search Console. So again, we've all kind of acknowledged these days that search engine optimization and appearing in search engines is extremely, extremely important. And a lot of companies will actually put a significant amount of investment into figuring out, well, look, how do they kind of increase their ranking for a particular type of keywords or for a particular type of demographic. But a surprisingly few amount of companies are actually tracking how they are doing on such search performances. So one of the things which you can do when you leave this webinar is you can just check, is your website actually registered with the Google Search Console, so that you can actually see exactly where you are appearing for different search results. So for argument's sake, you can take keywords which you might feel would be very applicable to your business, and you can see ultimately how many potential customers on Google, how many potential people on Google are actually being presented your website without you knowing about it when they type in those keywords. And when they do see your website presented for those keywords, how often are they actually deciding to click into you? And that is something which is invaluable, considering the fact that for a digital business, especially when you've made some investments in your website, for a digital business, Google has essentially become the world's largest shop front. So if that's the world's largest shop front, you want to make sure that you are front and center of it. And just even knowing where you stand will allow you to get that insight as to whether you should actually be investing more money in your search engine optimization, whether you've done a really good job up to now, or maybe you're doing really well in the search results. But then if you like going back to our first point, once they get into the website, you're not able to hold them, you're not able to convert them, whatever it is, it's just having that information and allowing you to actually make your decisions afterwards. So that was just a kind of, if you like, a little high level on what some of the types of things we can kind of do with our website. As I said, today is we are kind of going to be touching these topics at that kind of high level, but as I said, in our kind of follow-up series, we will be going through these in a little bit more detail. So if you do have kind of questions, or you feel you wished I would have kind of touched on something, please do kind of raise your hand as we're going through. So the next one which we're going to talk about is the concept of file management, and as I have on the screen, this is without doubt the most glamorous one. But the idea here is that ultimately, look, we all run businesses, and the whole purpose of a digital transformation or of undergoing any kind of growth approach is to ultimately grow the business so that we have more customers going through. Hopefully, we have more staff employed, which ultimately means we're going to have more documents, we're going to have more things which we have to account for, we're going to have to know, if you like, how employees are accessing the data, what they're doing with it. And so like just being able to not have to worry about that as part of your day-to-day operation can be invaluable in terms of the efficiency of the business. So again, if we can take things like file management and if we can automate that and if we can make that as simple as possible, and ultimately if it gets to the point where you never have to think about it, then that's a success. That means that you're out growing your business instead of wondering where the files are or can people access them at the right time. So looking at the screen which I have here, again, here we're just going to show some very simple things which can be done with, again, systems which a lot of companies who are listening here, or a lot of people will actually have access to. So again, we're talking about things you can do without going out and making any big investments, small little changes that will hopefully make a big difference to your business. So looking at the screen here, we have a SharePoint up on screen. Now the reality is, I'm showing SharePoint. This many companies will be using something like Google Drive, and again, the reality is that most things there's a huge overlap between the two platforms, and obviously there's other kind of cloud-based file management systems out there as well. So again, we're using SharePoint as an example. Really, we are kind of demonstrating the concept and the types of things which you can just, if you like, take out of your kind of if you're out of your thought process as part of running your business on a day-to-day basis. So again, looking at SharePoint, the first thing is, right, we have spent a huge amount of time, especially throughout the process of when we were kind of helping companies get through GDPR and when we were kind of doing digital transformation audits with them as part of such. One of the big things that would have come out is just even knowing where all your files are stored. So one of the big things we've seen is that as a company starts to grow, we'll accumulate, the number of laptops will begin to accumulate. Some companies will have servers, most companies will also have some kind of file-based system as well. And so what we're saying here is, even one clean switch could be to just synchronize everything into one spot, to say pick something like Google Drive or SharePoint and to make that your one centralized place for data management. What that means is that there are so many worries which could otherwise exist which will just be eliminated instantaneously for you. First of all, you know where everything is. Second of all, things like backup and if you like, system security no longer are your problem at that point. So like if you're with someone like Google or Microsoft for SharePoint, backups are taken care of, and ultimately you are storing your data on their system, and you are now starting to avail of their security. So again, that's hugely important. What we can always do, of course, is we can synchronize that one central location out to all your employees. So again, that means that your employees are on the go, they're on their phone, they're on their iPad, they're on their laptop. They don't have to worry about whether they have separate copies of that one file on all the different devices. That means that all these files will be edited and synchronized in real time. So if I'm out on my phone, I can access a file which one of my colleagues is editing back in the office, and there's just no lost time, there's no wasted communication or wasted stress trying to look for where things are. One of the big things that would have come up as part of the whole security feature around GDPR was the fact that actually you can use these systems to, again, with no manual input from yourself, set up complete auditing activities of your files. So again, it just means that you can, at the end of this, have a complete overview, as I've shown on the bottom left-hand side of the screen, of exactly who has been accessing the files, what they've done with it. So if something goes missing or some record is required with respect to one of your customers or one of your employees, it just means that you have instantaneous overview in a very easy one-click manner. One of the other things which obviously has come up, and we're not going to spend too long on this, but it was a real GDPR piece, was that concept of how do you ensure that your file management system is actually compliant. And again, that becomes very difficult if we're trying to manage individual laptops, individual computers. But again, by using one of these cloud-based file storage systems, it just means that you can set up you can set up centralized policies in terms of retention periods. So you can define how long documents that go into a particular folder will stay there before they're deleted. So that deals with one of the major headaches which companies are facing for GDPR. And again, that combined with the auditing ability and the, actually, if you like, physical and software security of the system itself, means that you are then in a very good position, if you like, to just to go on with your daily business and not to worry too much about the files where they are. One of the nicest features, which if you like, I want to kind of highlight as well, and again, this is continuing on with our SharePoint example, is the ability to actually edit documents at the same time as part of a team. So again, as small business, oftentimes you might have one person on the road, someone out with a client, and someone else back in the business. And it just means that again, you're eliminating that age-old heartache of having multiple versions of the same document. And again, you're saving things as version 1, version 2, version 3. That can just be completely eliminated with something like the example which I'm showing on screen here, which is where we're using a Microsoft Word document which is uploaded onto SharePoint, and again, it's being edited simultaneously. So you can actually see as one person's typing away, they can see the other person typing away at the same time. It's all been saved and updated in real time, and it just really streamlines that data operation for you. So again, that was file management, as I promised, very glamorous. So next we're going to move on to, if you like, the data analysis piece. So when it comes to data analysis, again, this is going to be different for every single business. So again, this is one of the things which we've seen offer huge benefit when we've kind of gone and helped out some companies on this kind of stuff, is just understanding where, if you like, everything is moving within the business. We all know the moving parts within our businesses. We deal with them on a day-to-day basis, but it's just being able to collate and pull all of that into one centralized place that again is being updated in real time, so that when you're out on the road, when you are meeting a client, that you can have an app on your phone or you can have your laptop open and you can see a real-time breakdown of how your profit and loss is performing, how different sectors of your sales are performing, if you like, how the internal efficiency as defined by whatever internal KPIs are important to your business are performing. And it just means that you again move from this idea of analysis being something which is done as a big once-off job on a periodic basis to being analysis something which is done real time on basically on the go, in order to understand and make decisions right there and then. And that's the big difference we're starting to see with data analysis. So what we're kind of encouraging companies to do is to start small when it comes to data analysis. Again, I'm showing a nice kind of dashboard where again this is the type of view which a company might end up with. But again, at the very start, we might only want to track one or two things. You might know the one or two things which, if you like, change on a daily or weekly basis, which make a big difference to your performance. And we say start small. Literally, let's just track that those one or two things, and then from that, let's see what other information might be valuable to build up over time, and to keep relating that information back to your decision making, which again should allow you to grow your business. And again, one of the real nice features, which I'm just showing on the screen here, is again this concept of real-time interaction with the information. So again, if you are a small business and you're out and about and you're watching your data on your phone, as you have on the right hand side, that basically, again, using something like Power BI, where you can be annotating your information as you go, you can be marking it, you can be sharing it with your team members, and it just means that you're in touch with the data as it comes through, and there's no time lag. So if there's a decision to be made, you have all the information at your fingertips to actually make it, and if you like, increase that efficiency as we go. So that kind of moves us on to, if you like, one of the kind of last sections first, so which is kind of coming down to customer management. So one of the, if you like, the big kind of fears we see when we're kind of talking to companies is that people feel that implementing systems, CRM systems, customer relation management systems, to manage all their consumer information and to stay on top of their customers, that it'll be very expensive and that it'll be very laborious to put in place. And I suppose what the purpose of this next slide or two is to show that that does not necessarily need to be the problem. So what I'm talking about here is a general streamlining of the data. So again, we all know the situation where you're growing as a business, information is coming in all these different sources. So again, we might be storing things in PowerPoints, Excel, Word, paper copies, etc. And that ultimately, when I say customer management, I mean pulling all that into one centralized manageable location. Now that centralized manageable location does not need to be a big expensive enterprise system. When I say a customer management system, that could be Excel. And at the start, if you're uncomfortable with the whole concept, or you're nervous about the concept of installing a CRM system, well, then we would actually advise people to use something like Excel, to get used to having one centralized, if you like, system for just staying on top of your customers. So have they been contacted recently? If you like, what services are customers currently maybe waiting for? Have they received their quotes? Have they received their invoices? Have we followed up with them? Just one centralized place to really stay on top of what's going on, to make sure that we're optimizing that engagement with the customer. Because again, remember, at this stage, we've worked so hard getting the web right, getting the interface right. We've tracked them going through. We've made sure they're kind of turning into active leads. So once we get them into the business, it's so important that we don't, if you like, let anyone or any group of them slip through the cracks. And so what we're kind of showing here is, on the left hand side, you can easily use something like Excel to manage all that data at the start. Now, as you start to use something like Excel, again, this is something which we've done for people, where we actually set up if you like, small little bespoke CRM type systems simply in Excel, that kind of allow them to track all their information. And once they kind of get comfortable with that, and they use that to kind of get their processes in place for staying on top of their customers, at that stage, some people then decide to, if you like, migrate onto a more enterprise solution, like something like Dynamics 365. And again, what we will say is that, again, these systems have a reputation for being very expensive, but they are not. That is something which is, I feel like, something that can be scaled down to any company's size. So these systems are more representative of the practice of staying on top of your customers, and I think that's the really important message from this. And we would really recommend that once you do start to kind of build up your customer numbers like this, or as you are building them, that we do place some emphasis on just how they will systematically or strategically managed by you and your staff going forward. And that's our, I feel like, really simple small little adjustments like that Excel system on the left hand side could be of huge benefit. And then I suppose one of the main things just to take from it, and again, whether it's in Excel or Dynamics, is just like what you're trying to achieve from putting in any kind of system like this. And in this case, it's a system for managing your customers. And one of the things we'd always recommend is to use it to really streamline flows. So again, in this on the screen here, you can see where, if you like, we've streamlined streamline the engagement with a potential opportunity in one of these types of systems. And again, all we're trying to do is to basically boil our interactions down to the really important bits, making sure we're capturing the right data, we're making the right contacts, and ultimately we're getting the right result. And again, regardless of whether this is in Excel or in something like Dynamics, what we're trying to show is that ultimately, again, this is like back with the dashboards, it's just trying to use the information to make really good decisions. Where are our sales coming from? Where could we be strengthening up? What types of customers are our ideal customers? It allows us to profile who we should be going forward, marketing, who we should be looking after, etc., etc. So really, the information is key with all of this. So just a kind of just 2 or 3 examples here of kind of some businesses who would have taken simple approaches. Again, these would have been companies who would have, or organizations who would have worked with us. And again, the thing to emphasize is that the changes that were made here were very, very simple, but the results were very, very effective. So the first case study we're going to show here is just of essentially a gym. And again, the requirement at the start of our engagement here was extremely, extremely simple. Ultimately, we needed to work together to try and grow the numbers moving through. So again, looking back on some of the points which we've mentioned through the talk, what are the types of things we could do? So again, this was a gym, so it is a B2C organization. So one of the first things we said was it was really, really important to get that front of house looking really, really good. So one of the first things we did was kind of design and develop the website so that no matter who comes across them from whatever source, that we are proud that ultimately they're going to stand a maximum chance of converting into a lead. After that, then we looked at working with them just in terms of analyzing their data, who's coming through, who's paying what, etc., etc. What are the types of customer profiles we have? And from all of this, we actually figured out that we should maybe be starting to target and offer some new services, which we did. After that, then we looked at streamlining the digital system by implementing a very simple online booking system. Again, so they were the kind of some of the simple actions which were taken. Again, very simple, low investment, but looking at our results in the first X amount of months, we actually grew the business by 59%. And that is something which again just shows the power of some really simple changes. A new website, an online booking system, and a simple new variation of a product which they were already offering. So really, really positive from output from a few small key decisions. A second example here is where, again, we're working with an organization to really try and streamline their data management. So this would have happened primarily throughout the if you like, the GDPR preparation time. And the whole thing was to move the storage of data from being in, say, if you like, at dispersed locations. So as we were kind of talking about earlier, it's about bringing it all into one centralized location and using that to really increase the operational efficiency, which again allows the organization then to streamline all their other aspects as well. So here what we would have done is we would have implemented again a customer relationship management system, Dynamics 365, and again we were able to do that because once it was scaled down and tailored to the organization, the cost was in the correct profile, everything was nice and suitable for the type of organization which we were dealing with. And again, just looking at the types of results which we achieved by just, again, this kind of operational efficiency increase, we were actually able to reduce their operational costs, if you like, by 28%. So again, just showing that a few little data management steps can actually have a huge impact. And again, this would have all been done on a low cost basis as well. So ultimately, I suppose, like, there were a couple of examples, and I know earlier we've kind of talked through a general kind of ways, if you like, that we can kind of get started on it. But I suppose I just wanted to finish on this idea of how do we actually get going. So the first thing we'd say is you got to know what you want. So what are the targets? Is it increased customer numbers? Is it increased efficiency, reduced costs, increased margin? It's really, really important before you start any transformation. This is what we were talking about earlier. Only a small percentage of people actually have this roadmap in place. So we'd always recommend doing a digital audit at the start just to figure out, like, what you have in place. And that's the next step here, current state of play. So what do you have in place? What data has been processed? Who has access? What systems are currently in place to actually try and achieve these targets? So we know what we want to achieve. We know what we currently have in place. The next thing is let's come up with that plan, which again suits the budget, suits the outputs which we're trying to achieve. And the real important thing about this plan is to make it realistic. So the thing about the plan is obviously it's very easy to kind of dream of things which might or might not occur over a long period of time. But what we always kind of encourage people to do is pick really small, really achievable results, so that as we're going through it, we're getting those successes and we're seeing the return on the investment that is being made. So we're kind of we're always in that kind of positive state. The next thing obviously is then to implement, as I said, keep it simple, realistic KPIs, small manageable steps. And then the really, really important thing is to continuously be analyzing and reviewing it. Digital technology is moving forward, our businesses are moving forward, everyone's growing, everyone's changing. This is a never-ending cycle of staying on top of it and making use of the newest technologies and services that are available to us. So analyzing and reviewing it is vitally important. Once you do that, we're back into adjusting our targets, redefining them, and getting started again on the process. So I'll just finish on a final quote, and the reality of this quote just sums up the fact that, as I said, the digital world is changing, our business world is changing, and if we want to stay on top of it, you've got to be at the cutting edge. And I think our man Henry Ford here summed it up better than I ever will. So thank you very much for that. Really appreciate you kind of sticking with us for the talk. As said, if we have any questions, I think we have a little bit of time, and I think we have one or two coming through. So as I said, do keep them coming in if there's anything you'd like us to discuss, or as I said, really importantly, if there's anything which you'd like us to discuss in future webinars or to go into a little bit more detail on first. So the first question we have coming through is, how would you audit your business progress in relation to digital transformation? So one of the things, I suppose, or maybe I'll go back to this kind of slide to answer that. The first thing which we do always is to kind of, as part of the digital audit process, we kind of really try and follow the first two steps, if you like. So we do try follow this map as we're kind of auditing. So the first one really is just to define what are you trying to achieve, because ultimately, without knowing what you're trying to achieve, there's a million and one different things which you could be doing with these types of systems. Again, we've touched on a few of them here, but ultimately you could spend the next year implementing systems. You could spend the next year spending money on this, that, and the other, but ultimately you're probably trying to achieve one or two really, really core objectives. So the thing for us is to actually, I suppose, if we're working with a company, what we come in, we break down exactly what your KPIs are, or if you like, we work with you to figure out what your KPIs should be. At that point, we quantify exactly what the data systems currently are that are in place. We look at what those data systems need to be or could be in order to achieve those KPIs. At that stage, it becomes like a digital gap analysis, if you like, where we can identify the highest priority aspects which should be implemented, which would give you the maximum rate of return. So for argument's sake, if you were a B2C company and we looked and we were able to see that you're not, say, using something like Google AdWords and we're not kind of getting that digital traffic to our website, that might be something which, again, is a really, if you like, a really quick win, which would have a really big impact on your business and would therefore be high in terms of the priorities as to what we should be addressing first in order to really grow that digital side. So we, as I said, like, we come in, we identify the targets, work with you to define the KPIs. Then at that stage, we do kind of, if you like, that kind of audit in terms of like what's actually in place, identify the gaps, pick the highest priority, basically the highest win, lowest cost, if you like, or cost or effort steps, and we kind of start ticking them off one by one and starting to work through it, and always quantifying that ROI as we're going through. So the next one was, if there was one thing that you think all businesses should be doing, what steps would you take? What steps would you take towards that system? So in terms of one thing that all business should be doing, that's quite a tough one. It's a very, very good question, but it's quite a tough one in the fact that by definition, every business is going to be different. So like to kind of compare, say, if you like, a B2B SME with a B2C SME would be, if you like, would be quite tough, because if you like, the priorities might be very different and the financial model might be very different. The one thing I will say, though, however, that goes through absolutely every strand of everything we have talked to, and I'm going to go back on my slides for this because I always like a bit of visual support, is to know where your data is. This is the one thing that, regardless who you're selling to, where your product is coming from, what your employee setup looks like, whether it's a one person company or if you're like someone a lot bigger, this is the one thing that absolutely every company should be doing. And to do this, this could be set up before you leave the office today. Using something like Power BI, you can be tracking your information on your mobile, tablet, laptop, computers, everything. You can be tracking everything that's flowing through your business without having to purchase any large system or spend any time trying to set up anything complex. So this Power BI could be set up to a simple set of Excel sheets which you're tracking in your file system at the moment. But it just means that what you're doing is you're bringing it alive and you're actually starting to use it now to make your day-to-day decisions. So quite a tough question, but the one thing I would say that I can definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, say applies to absolutely every single business is to get on top of your business analysis. So get on top of weekly, monthly, quarterly analyzing. Where's your profit and loss? What's your margin doing? How are your customers behaving? What could you be doing to improve? Where are your sales strong? Where are your sales weak? How is your advertising doing? How's your marketing doing? And just to bring it all into one manageable place so that you're, as I said, you're on the go, you're out with a customer, you're on the street walking along, you can be analyzing and improving your business all the time because business doesn't stop, so your analysis shouldn't stop either. Okay, I'm getting a signal from my co-pilot here telling me that we're definitely out of time at this stage. So listen, I really want to thank you again for attending the talk. We will be kind of pushing out some more of these now over the next period of time, so we'll keep you updated on that. As I said, if there's any kind of feedback from this afterwards, if there's anything you'd like us to focus on in the future, please do feel free to reach out to us at any time, and we'd be delighted to get back to you as soon as we can. And remember, if you do have a chance to fill out that survey, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you very much.